leadership now is about awareness, and the essence is to be able to move between those two sides of anything we're working with.
Yeah, in every company we need the visionary, and visionaries are the lifeblood of a business, and visionaries can also be very dangerous
Absolutely,
to a
absolutely,
business as well.
absolutely. So when we're stuck on the side of a polarity, um, we are unaware, and that's when we unconsciously make decisions that are incorrect, is because of that lack of awareness of the other side. So to me, we're always striving towards wholeness. And wholeness is the ability to get to know your shadow side. And the shadow side is obviously the opposite side to our preferred side. So if our preferred side is being sensitive and empathetic and tactful, then we make many mistakes because we don't be really honest about how we feel about something or how we see something is happening, and vice versa.
Kevin Fahey, it's good to see you again, and you're very welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
You too, Paul, and thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Pleasure. Hopefully, it's going to be a good chat. Kevin, you and I have known each other for at least a decade, or is it more? Have you a better memory of how long ago it is?
I'd say the decade just about covers it. Yeah.
Decade, just about covered. Let's not fight over a year here or there.
Yeah.
And so for those people who don't know Kevin Fahey, you're the CEO and founder of the Essence of Leadership, which is a peer-to-peer coaching company. And when you reached out to me all those years ago, I had neither heard of the Essence of Leadership or peer-to-peer coaching. So the first question is, well, I suppose, what is the essence of leadership? Now that you've been doing this for, I think, close on 2 decades, in your view, what is the essence of leadership?
Well, there's a lot been written about leadership, and it usually comes out as opinions from people. And for me, theories are opinions. So I studied process work and I studied personal construct psychology. And one of the things I discovered is that in values and behaviors, they're all a polarity. So there's two sides to everything. And when I was doing work in companies, in a few multinationals and large Irish companies, we would do values. One of the things I discovered was that when values were written up as something to espouse to, they were usually one side of a behavior. So the best example I can give is a value we have is maybe being honest. And people want, how can I be honest with each other in the in the team? And then I started to think about this and I began to realize that honesty is one side of a polarity. For me, the other side of it is to be sensitive and tactful. But if somebody is oversensitive and over tactful all the time, they don't really give honest feedback. And people who live on the honesty side of the polarity can sometimes be blunt to the extent of maybe in the wrong place, saying the wrong thing and being hurtful and have a negative impact on the relationship. So for me, the essence is to be able to be in both places, to be able to be conscious of how can I be sensitive and tactful and still get my message across. So the essence brings in both sides of a polarity. It's the same as fast and slow. How can I be present and conscious to what's happening to me and still try to push forward?
Well, there's two interesting things there. One is that when you talked about the value of honesty, I immediately went to the polarity. So I thought, well, the opposite of that is dishonesty. And then you never mentioned dishonesty because obviously in a business, if I say the value is honesty, well, of course I don't want dishonesty. But but it's not only dishonesty, there's sensitivity as well. You do want sensitivity. And as someone who is, at times I am blunt and I am direct. and that's not the best approach for everyone. So it sounds like what you're saying is for a leader needs to have that awareness is that there's two sides of the coin, and honesty has many variants. Is what you're saying? That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, yeah. And that applies to every aspect. Like people talk about seeing the big picture. Somebody can see the big picture. Well, the other side of it is the devil is in the detail.
Mm.
So it's the ability to be able to move between the two. And I think you used a great word there, Paul, awareness. So for me, leadership now is about awareness. And the essence is to be able to move between those two sides of anything we're working with.
Yeah, in every company we need the visionary, and visionaries are the lifeblood of a business, and visionaries can also be very dangerous
Absolutely,
to a
absolutely,
business as well.
absolutely. So when we're stuck on the side of a polarity, um, we are unaware, and that's when we unconsciously make decisions that are incorrect, is because of that lack of awareness of the other side. So to me, we're always striving towards wholeness, and wholeness is the ability to get to know your shadow side. And the shadow side is obviously the opposite side to our preferred side. So if our preferred side is being sensitive and empathetic and tactful, then we make many mistakes because we don't be really honest about how we feel about something or how we see something is happening, and vice versa.
I suppose we notice that by our own comfort level, what we lean into. Do we feel do I feel comfortable being completely direct with you, with a team member, with someone who works for me or whatever? Or do I feel more comfortable if I don't go so direct? So I suppose that's how we observe where we lean to ourselves,
Yeah,
what our own nature is.
absolutely, absolutely. And we live in our, that part of us that we are familiar with. We live in that place, and it's a as you said, it's a comfortable place. It's what
Mm,
we know. The other side can be quite daunting. So for the impact and the sensitive person, it's very daunting to be very honest.
mm.
And vice versa, for a person who'd been raised on being quite honest and quite straightforward, it can appear very dishonest to let something go and say, well, now is not the right time, because that's where they're not comfortable there because they see that as being false.
Yeah, I came across a conversation really where someone was talking about multicultural workplaces, and he was talking about a leader, and I can't remember what culture he came from, but their style was that they were very direct, but they would get angry very easy. So you would do something wrong, and they would roar and scream at you.
Mm,
Then once it was communicated, boom, it was over. They'd move on to go on with the rest of the day. And what they began to observe is that, but the rest of the team weren't moving on.
absolutely.
So the rest of the team were now derailed for ages. And this particular individual had grown, maybe they're Italian or something, I don't know, but they'd grown up in a home where it was fiery and people said what they thought, but
Mm,
then it was moved on. So they just assumed that that's how it was going to work.
yeah.
But they were working with these people now from the US who didn't understand that level of aggression maybe in the workplace, and so they couldn't recover from it. So the leadership awareness is to recognize two things. One is who's your audience, who you're speaking to, and
Mm,
you can't just maybe behave what you want. You have to be aware of how the type of communication you lean into, and the type of communication the listener is comfortable with experience as well. And you're trying to find somewhere in the middle, I suppose.
absolutely. And it's that ability. And I'm working on a book at the moment, which has been germinating for a few years. It's called Enriching Cultures. And it's the idea of bringing in all those both sides of the coin and just helping in awareness. and having the teams being aware of their own different styles, because it is a style, as you said, we get used to. And in psychometrics, what you're describing there as the Italian is the high red.
Mm.
And the high red has that short fuse, but within 5 minutes,
Yeah.
once they have let the steam off,
Yeah.
they're fine. But then the people who are opposite them on that circle, the greens, as they call them in the colours, they're quite hurt and could take hours, days, weeks to recover from that, depending on how bad the outburst was. Whereas the other person has moved on and can't understand why people are not talking to them anymore.
Mm.
And it's not an either or. No style is right or wrong. So for me, it's about rather than having a monoculture like we have in nature, where we go out in nature and we plant a certain grass, we don't allow all the weeds.
Mm.
So if we can create a culture where each voice is heard and each voice is given credence, and each voice then accepts the other voices, then we can have a dialogue where it's much more nuanced and the communication is more nuanced and it's more holistic. And it's what we're now getting back to in nature, where we're saying what we used to class as weeds, we now call wildflowers. So could we see the lazy person in the team as being a wildflower? Maybe the team needs to slow down,
Mm.
take things at a slower pace, be more considered, and then move to a fast pace at another time.
Well, it's a very liberal viewpoint, and most managers, business owners, etc., listen to this and going, I don't want the lazy person on my
Yeah.
team because the lazy person is not getting the work done and they're disruptive." So I, I'm imagining a listener thinking, "Well, this is all very nice, but realistically, when you walk into a challenging business environment, how is that approach practical?"
Well, it's practical once the team members become more aware of it. And if you take the lazy person, if you take the ability sometimes to slow down, most problems in the world, and they say 99% of problems in business, in our personal lives and in the world, are the solution to a previous problem. And that solution was taken with a one sided view, a bit like the stick and plaster.
Mm.
So, how it works is it reduces the chances of us doing a quick fix or thinking that something that worked before will work again. And so there's less chance of having to go back and refix something because somebody make a quick decision either to fire somebody without going through due process, which ends up then in affecting the mood in the whole company. It affects them going to the labour court
Yeah.
and being on the news, etc., etc. And but it affects even in technical matters. You follow me? Sometimes we make a much more considered decision when we sit on it. And then there are other times when we can be too slow. We'll miss the opportunity. And we never know at the
Mm.
time. But it's to have that ability to say, is this something I need to move fast on, or is it something I need more information on?
And is this the leader asking this question?
Well, obviously, preferably there's somebody in the team or a number of people in the team who, if the team has a good culture, it may not necessarily be the leader in the moment. It
Yeah.
could be somebody else in the team who, in that moment, says, hold on, I don't think we're going down the right road here. I think we're going down a cul-de-sac.
So it seems now we've moved into a conversation towards what peer-to-peer coaching in the workplace is. So
Absolutely.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, peer coaching is a number of different things. There's an element of that, but it's based on the idea that everybody has their own wisdom and that each person who's come up through life, being raised, going into different roles, different jobs, in different communities has developed a wisdom for themselves. And it moves then from being a single view of life to being multiple views. And when we get multiple views, we get people coming in from different angles. And that again gives this more holistic approach. So everybody has a voice. So there is a great book written called A Simpler Way. I have it here in front of me. It's written by a couple, Margaret J. Wheatley and Myron Kellner Rogers. And the idea behind it is that we're self-organizing organisms. So when you get a group of people together and they're working reasonably well or they have a common purpose, they can solve most problems that are in front of them. And when I go back to when I was reared up, I mean, I was born in 1949, so I was reared in the 1950s in East Galway in a rural parish. And when I reflect back on that after having read the book, I realised that as 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys in the schoolyard, we went out and we got together after we had gulped down our lunch or sandwich. And we got together and we arranged two hurling teams. And there might be five-a-side, six-a-side, seven-a-side, depending on two or three classes put together. We agreed the rules. We went out and put two sticks in the field each side and we played a game. We didn't need a coach. We didn't need the headmaster to come out. We didn't need an adult. So those kids literally had their own wisdom. And when I reflect back on that, then I began to think that after that, then we put people into hierarchical situations where they're told what to do in a school by a school teacher at different levels. They're told a theory in a book, and then to go into a company, and the same thing happens. Now, gradually with evolution, young people are coming in and they want their voice to be heard. And the idea of peer-to-peer coaching is both as a group, it helps people get feedback on themselves from multiple experiences. But also when you bring it into the workplace, rather than the leader have to have the answers, it means that the team can come up with answers. But it also means when the leader isn't there, that any member of the team can become a leader in any moment. And that's part of the whole philosophy behind reinventing organizations, where a study of 13 of the most successful organizations that hit the top KPIs, they pay the highest wages, they have the lowest cost, they have the highest employee engagement, the highest margin, and they do that without any hierarchy. So leadership is distributed by anybody. Each person can pick up a leadership role within the group. And it is incredibly successful in the fact that they're the highest growth organizations now. So that's all where peer-to-peer coaching is. It's that collective and allowing the wisdom of the collective. And my role is only to facilitate that. Now, I can have an opinion, and I will throw it in ever so often, but generally it's to facilitate the wisdom of other people.
Well, you can have an opinion because in that environment, you're part of the group. You're
Absolutely.
part of the peers. My experience, I mean, I suppose I'm in favor of peer-to-peer engagement from the point of view that if you have an organization, people have different ranks, functions within an organization, and they've different skills. And maybe those skills are to some degree equally valuable because you have the guy who's the CEO of the business and maybe he's very smart, and you have the guy who packs shelves in the warehouse. Well, if the guy who packs the shelves in the warehouse packs the wrong kit in a box,
Mm.
everything falls down because the customer is not served properly. So from that point of view, I always think we need to rank, everyone's job is very, very important. But in my experience of getting people to try and to work together with something like peer-to-peer coaching, in other words, having people sit around the table and to have all voices being heard. Um, and this is, this is a test case of one company of my own, is that when you've the wrong people around the table, I'll rephrase that. When I have had the wrong people around the table, that hasn't worked so well for me. In other words, if you have a a troublemaker, a disgruntled member of staff, or something, then it doesn't work so well. When you have a much better culture in the business and you have the right people around the table, that can work very well. So, is there a risk inherent in this? If someone is listening to this and thinking, well, I need to try more of a peer to peer, less hierarchical approach in my organization, um, is there danger when they have the wrong people on the team?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things they do in the reinventing organizations is that the group, the team, and generally their teams of 12, they will select and deselect somebody who doesn't suit the group.
Okay.
So they will have a conversation around why it's working out, why it's not working out.
Mm,
And they have a fantastic system. They have built up a fund where if somebody is not working out within the organization, they literally, even if they're only employed for a month, they may get 6 months or 12 months salary leaving because it's more important for the team to have the right person
mm,
than to say, well, we need to save that money. Why should
mm.
we give them that money or give her that money?
Yeah.
The absolute key thing is that each person can buy in because it can be quite challenging. It's quite challenging in society for people who are used to being told what to do in school, to sit in these rows. This is how you add up. This is how you subtract. This is how you read. This is how you write. And then go into the workplace and understand that. And I was interviewing a client on Friday who set up a company in the UK where he's employed people. And he's trying to get them to buy into this. And he said, I'm not appointing a manager. And he's having real resistance because he says, one guy says, I worked in a company where literally the guy did nothing but walk up and down the factory floor like a sergeant major.
Mm,
And he was an ex army man who had been brought in
mm,
because he had seen to have real leadership. And he said, this is going to take me a while to get used to your beliefs. So this is a change, Paul, that's definitely a lot of companies are not ready for, but it's part of
mm,
an evolution that's happening. And it's happening quite fast. And I'm finding that you cannot implement this idea and dismantle what's already there. It's got to be a gradual progression where the leader gradually moves into this. And I hate to mention the word Trump, but it's
mm,
like, do you follow me? I can implement all those tariffs, etc.,
mm.
or dismantle the government that's there. And I partly agree with some of the stuff he's doing, but you can't take it out without putting something in place.
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening with peer-to-peer coaching. It's an evolution. It took me a while to get used to being a facilitator where I wasn't controlling the room. I had to learn, I had to really talk to myself, I had to observe myself. I used to even video some of my sessions and I go, oh my God, I'm
Mm.
jumping in there.
Yeah. I mean, I've listeners in the US, so I want to avoid a political conversation. But I think, but nonetheless, I think whether you like Trump or not, what we're seeing there is probably one man or a very small amount of people making significant decisions that are affecting a population of whatever they have, 360 million, and the wider world. And and some of those decisions are maybe egotistical decisions because I've decided I know best, this is right, and then we implement it, and then we see the consequences, and our ego prevents us from acknowledging that those decisions were weak. And I mean, I remember doing this years ago in my own business,
Mm,
making some decisions that ended up being wrong and being costly to the business, and recognizing later that two things. I recognized two things. One is that other people in the organization had probably spotted some of the errors, and maybe they didn't feel at liberate, free to communicate it. And some people hadn't spotted the mistakes. Um, and I decided going forward it was best to surround myself with people who are on the maybe that's the back to the polarity, who are on the opposite side of the scale to me, and therefore could witness some of my stupidity or my weakness. Because I think the strongest decisions is not about right and wrong. I think the strongest decisions will be made when you put two people in a room who respect each other, who think differently, and want to recognize both of those viewpoints and emerge with the best decision.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is the key. And the key is where we can. I suppose it takes a lot of confidence and humility to be able to realize that none of us has the answers. Like, we all have our blind spots, and have that openness and that trust in other people, and be able to challenge them and be open to be able to be challenged back, and to recognize sometimes that people just will not get it.
Yeah. I think when you say there, though, that none of us have the answers, uh, I think what I've seen, and I'm wondering, have you seen as well, because you've obviously been inside so many organizations, that when one person doesn't have the answers, but when you put a group of people in the room together, that there's a much greater chances of those answers emerging.
Yeah, and people have a fear of groups. I've seen in my past, in going back over 10 years when I went into companies and started working on this, and the leader would absolutely freeze at the idea of handing it over to the team because they had this idea that everybody had to agree, and they found it impossible to get five or six managers or five or six employees in the group to agree to this. So it isn't about getting everybody to agree. It's only about gaining a sense of a consensus. And I
Mm.
use this term now, where's the energy flow? Can we
Yeah.
use that? You're not going to get everybody with you. That's,
Mm.
you know, pie in the sky. Think,
Mm.
no, sometimes you will. And you'll be absolutely thrilled that the whole team is moving. But most times you do need people. But at the end of the day, if you can get a group of people or a consensus within the group that we're going to try this,
Mm.
then you have a much better chance than if you have one person who might be living in an echo chamber with their own mates.
Mm.
And, because everybody else says it, this has to be right.
Well, I think when you bring mutual respect into the room, what we have tried to do over the years is at a management level is that we agree we will support the consensus. If there's five people in a room and three are wanting to go one way, two are wanting to go the other way, that you ultimately go, well, that's not the way I would go, but I see the consensus thinks that's a good idea. So I will support this effort and try and make this work. I think two things are essential in that. One is you have to be willing to go, well, maybe I'm wrong, so I will give this 100%. I don't want to prove you wrong. But the other part of that is you have to have an environment where people will go, we went down the wrong road. Who they'll quickly go, that was wrong. Because when you've a team, and I've had them, where people want to be right, then they'll be argumentative because they won't support what you want to do, and their version of support will be trying to prove you are wrong. So it seems to me like you're leaning towards or looking towards an environment where you have a lot of emotional maturity in the room. And I'm wondering, you obviously get eyes into lots of businesses. How often do you see that emotional maturity?
I'm seeing it more and more. I'm being inspired. After
Is that a
10 years,
particular generation, or is that just true across the board? Or are you seeing a particular generation with that?
no, it's across the board.
Okay.
I see there's an evolution going on in the world. And like we listen to the news and we read the papers and we hear all the negative stuff. And that's the old wisdom.
Mm.
The empty vessels make most noise. And that's how the news is set up. And we read the bad stuff. But below the surface, there is bubbling away at all levels. People in their 60s, 70s reaching a great level of maturity and wisdom. Younger people coming in, they have old heads on young shoulders.
Mm.
I have um, my forums where I do the peer-to-peer
Mm.
go from the mid-20s up to the 70s.
Mm.
So I'm in with people who are 71, 74, up to my own age. And I had people in their late 20s starting out next generation groups, starting out in professional managers, HR, and they have wisdom. And it just blows my mind. But I have noticed over the last number of years, there is a greater emotional maturity. Now, there are some people stuck in their emotions. I was stuck. Like, I remember working with a coach. Well, she was my um, supervisor in the States when I was doing process work. And I remember one night about 20 years ago, and before Zoom came in, Skype was the big thing at the time. And one night she said to me, Kevin, do you ever feel? She'd asked me the question, how do you feel about something? And I realised I didn't go below my head. Because I was an engineer, I was up here rational and logical. So I totally understand when people find it difficult to access their emotions.
Mm.
Like I was well into my 50s before I did it. So I had a PhD in living in my rational logical brain. Didn't want to go down there and
Mm.
didn't want to understand it. But I do see it's a fabulous thing that's happening. And I think it's going to have great impact on better decisions being made. It's going to impact on cultures that are more understanding of people who are going through emotional issues. Because we never know an employee who
Mm.
rises in the morning, whether one of their parents is after something terrible happening to them, one of their kids, something is after going wrong,
Mm.
and we jump in straight away. We don't read the emotions, we don't read the body language. Now, we don't have to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We still need to get the work done. We need to get the profit, the margins, everything done. But just that few seconds or that minute of being able to connect with somebody at an emotional level makes such an, and it helps the person
Mm.
perform better as the day goes on. Sometimes just to be heard.
The thing I've witnessed from my own experience in the forums is that um, it's when you get the right group of people in a room, even when they don't know each other that well, it's amazing how quickly trust, openness, and honesty emerges. Is that you? I mean, obviously, I've only sat in one particular forum. Is that something you witnessed throughout all your forums?
It's amazing. Like I've had people where I get a referral, get talking to somebody or somebody I know for a while, and they say, Kevin, I'm not great at speaking in front of people. For the first few hours, can I just sit and
Mm.
observe? And I'll say, absolutely no problem. You just come in.
Mm.
And within a half an hour, they're singing.
Yeah,
They're absolute. The trust can take 5, 10, 15 minutes to build
yeah,
up in the group. It's like an energy that people pick up from each other.
yeah.
You just pick it up in the tone of voice, the body language. They just get a sense. But there is a psychological one that's observed, and that is that we're much more likely to be open in front of strangers
Isn't it funny?
than we are in front of our family. And that's why when I do in-house stuff now with teams, I don't do the same as I do in the public
Yeah.
because people are much slower to open up in front of people to work with. But they do eventually. After a few
Mm.
months, you'll notice they will be much more open about it. But it does take them a while. But you're right, strangers when they come in. But if there's somebody stuck in the group or there's something going on, you'll notice there's a reticence. So we pick up stuff, we have this animal instinct. Animals are fantastic at it.
Mm.
When they come in together, the smell, to get the sense of is this safe for me?
Yeah. What's also interesting is how a theme always emerges. Six people arrive into the room. They haven't seen each other for 2 months. They've had no conversation, no connection. And we arrive in, and you start putting, issues for conversation up on the board. And after a while, I mean, it almost always seems to that some thread emerges, even if those people have been in that room many times over the years. But a thread begins to emerge of, and I know the expression you will use is what wants to be
Yeah,
uh,
it wants to emerge. Yeah.
what wants to emerge. And I've heard you say that many times. And firstly, I'm always I admire you using that sort of language when you're sitting in front of a a half a dozen, cold-hearted CEOs, and you talk about what wants to emerge. But people remain in the room. When you talk about that, what wants to emerge, what exactly? I mean, that's leaning into your own personal philosophy of life, I think. So, what exactly does that mean to
Well,
you?
that started out with when I was studying psychology, because my background, like I left school at 18 with a failed leaving cert because Irish was a requirement at the time and I had to go back and redo to get my leaving cert. And then went to college at night to do industrial engineering and all that. So I didn't have a massive formal education, but later in life, I realized to sort out my own life, I realized I had issues that needed to be sorted out. I started studying psychology, and one of the things I came across was Carl Jung was the father of psychology. So I read a lot about him. But he talked a lot about the collective unconscious. And he used that instead of using the word spirituality.
Mm,
So I started to pick up that thread that we're all interconnected. And then, crazily, I started studying quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics really was blowing people's minds away for those who had any kind of a leaning towards that there's more to life than the material stuff we come across, that there's an interconnectedness amongst everybody. So that led me to think that there is an interconnectedness. And this whole idea of evolution and as to why we're here, I kind of within the surface, I just feel that collectively we're very often dealing with the same thing. And if we go back to politics and the news, you often hear people giving out, Jesus, this country is so backward, we're having problems with the health service. But you listen to European news, or the UK or the BBC or the American channels,
mm.
and they're all having the same problem with their health
Or
service.
the housing crisis or whatever.
Prices. It's going on in Australia, it's going on everywhere.
Yeah.
So at a material level, all that's happening, we're all in, but at a psychic level, I also know. So I began to observe because I've 8 different groups, and every single group, every time they come with a theme. And this
Mm,
blows my mind. But it reinforces my thinking that we're picking up whatever we need to pick up that's going on in the environment.
mm,
And we process that. And then we move on to the next one.
mm,
Because evolution, there's no end to evolution. There's no perfect state that's ever there. We've been around for thousands of years and we're still striving for the next level. So it is whatever wants to emerge for me. Arnie Mendel used to call it the dreaming. He said we're dreaming day and we're dreaming during the night. So what's the dreaming?
And what is the dreaming?
Well, the dreaming is whatever it is. There is no, do you follow me? The dreaming is coming out the whole time. It's that the next level that needs to be done. Like
Mm,
every day we get up, we have something that our psychic energy, some people call it the soul, some people call it the essence, the energy. It doesn't matter what, they're only labels, but
mm,
it's something deeper within us. So we're all gaining new levels of awareness. And I love the one in Shrek, that's animated film.
I know it very well, yes.
The donkey and I forget who the character in it is. Or maybe just Shrek himself talking about the onion, delayering the onion. So I don't think we ever get to the core. When
I
we get
don't
to the
think so.
core, we're ready to exit this incarnation we're in now. So that for me is this team. This team is something that each day we're striving to work on an aspect of ourselves and work on an aspect of the group.
And you said you have 8 forums operating at the moment. When you talk like this across the forums about this interconnectedness, about this emerging, and I know you often use the expression the wisdom in the room, which we might talk a little bit more about, but people effectively come to you via their business, either because they own a business or they're, I suppose, mostly senior management in a business. How important is it that people are willing to explore this deeper stuff, this interconnectedness, and how open are people to having those conversations and having that exploration? I mean, do people just want to come in because they want to solve a business problem?
Yes, and generally it's because business owners and managers are very practical and pragmatic.
Yeah.
And there's no point in having a philosophical conversation about how this works.
Mm.
I actually want the pain in my back to go away.
Yeah. Regardless of what cause that you wanted to go away.
I just wanted to go away. And that's human nature.
Yeah.
And but like there's a number of different levels. There's one where that needs to happen. But the idea that people come in, I've another philosophy which I've come across a number of years ago, and as I observe back in my own life, I see lots of practical examples as to why it's happening. We're all on a journey, is a belief I have. And I believe that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and vice versa. When the teacher is ready to. So I believe the people who come to the forums come because that's the next step in their journey.
Mm.
So I'm not going to get everybody in.
Mm.
And there are some people who've moved beyond what I've done and are ready for a phase that maybe I'm not at,
Mm.
because there's no perfect place on that journey. It
Yeah.
literally is the journey. So
Mm.
I feel that the people who arrive in have arrived in because they've they've done, and I use it like from an education point in Ireland. You don't go back and do your junior cert or whatever it is now after you've done your leaving cert. You move
Mm.
on to the next one, and that's the way I look at it. And that helps me then to understand why there are people that I've met 10 years ago, and it's been 10 years later before they've arrived at one of the sessions.
Because they've come to a different point in their lives where this is.
Absolutely. It's all about timing. It's when the time is right for us, where there's something that attracts us to that, and we're open to it. And that's why I'd say at the moment about 90, anything from 95, 97% of people who come to the sessions actually stay in them.
95 to 9% stay.
Stay.
Wow.
To stay for a year, 2 years, 3 years, some
Yeah.
people 6 or 7 or 10 years, and so.
Yeah. Because I know within the sessions, because I've been in them, you're very open about this philosophy, and you're very open about your own deep sense of spirituality and the connectedness and how that's informing everything in the room. I'm wondering, when you walk into a business or to a CEO's office, do you use that? I mean, do you use, it's a long time since we first met, so I don't remember. Do you use that language or do you wait till you have them in the room before you start talking like that?
I trust. I've come to a level now where I almost know that if I start using that, I've lost the sale.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
follow me? I'm out the door.
Yeah.
And I also know that within maybe half an hour sometimes, I'll pick up cues or we'll pick up cues from each other. And I know that I'll get the sale if I go there
Mm.
because they want to know where I'm at. Will I bring them to another level?
Yeah.
Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong, sometimes I've pushed it too far. Uh, but people want to know where you're at. So I continuously have to remind myself is to be with the client where they're at,
Mm.
because that's the only way we can talk at the moment.
It's interesting you talk about pushing, going too far, because I have often been in the room, in the forums, and thought to himself, he's gone too far. you know, I mean, I've gone too far, and as you know, I'm very open to these things. If he's gone too far, he's going to lose the room, because I know the guys in the room, and there's some very serious business people in in
Mm,
the room. I've yet to see you lose the room, though. That's what amazes me. I hear you talk like this, and I go, but it doesn't. I know there are already clients in the room, but
mm,
it doesn't lose the room. Even the hard nosed business people at some level seem to get it, seem to relate to it.
mm,
And I think it then, I suppose if you stand up in front of a group, and I'm going to say are willing to make an idiot of yourself, I don't mean that. Do you know what I mean? But if you're willing to get up there and go, "Hey, this is just how I see the world, guys,"
Mm,
and maybe that encourages and spawns the openness in the room and the vulnerability in the people, and for people to say what they think. You know, that's been my experience of sitting in a room.
absolutely. Yeah. You see, besides being hard nosed, pragmatic business owners who just have to make decisions
Mm,
that do affect the lives of people, and those decisions, if you're not able to make a profit, you can't reinvest. If you don't have enough money coming in, you can't pay the wages. If you don't deliver the product. So those are all the things that people deal with. But everybody does have a moment. And it might be when they go to bed at night, it might be when they get up in the morning,
mm,
it might be when they come across something religious or spiritual. They do have a moment where they ask themselves, what's this about?
mm.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to be able to make that connection with people
Mm,
that we are all of this. We are people who have to be breadwinners, who have to make practical decisions. But behind it all, there's a deep sense of trying to understand what it is about. And I mean, the biggest thing that's happened to me in my life is to make peace with my death, is to make peace with why I'm here. And once I did that, then it doesn't bother me after that. So the thing about losing the room, if I do lose the room, one time I would have beaten myself up. The inner critic would have had a field day,
mm,
kicking the shite out of me for to
mm.
follow me for being so
Yeah.
stupid, being pushing things too far. I suppose I've reached that stage now where I've said, no, I was supposed to do that.
Yeah.
I was supposed to take the pin out of that hand grenade and let go off, you know.
Yeah.
And it might affect people down the road, but something because when I look back on my own life, I've attracted some incredible teachers into it, and they have shown me the next mile down the road. They shone a light for me. So sometimes I feel I need to be that teacher to shine that light.
Mm. I suppose we all need and hope that that at those at different stages along the road we will find that teacher who can guide us the next 10 yards, the next 10 miles. Uh, but then it's usually someone else. But we all maybe unwittingly are also a teacher to someone else in in the example we can give to them. Um,
Well, my daughter who walked past there earlier on in the video, it was her birthday yesterday, and we were in the house, and I made some remark about I'm a little bit almost because I'm spiritual. I'm almost anti-religion.
mm,
So I was being critical of the Pope and the last Pope,
mm,
and she became my teacher by pointing out. I was shocked at her because I saw her as a total atheist. I have
mm,
two daughters, and neither of them have any sense of. Do you follow me? They
mm,
just humor dad,
mm.
and so like she started to talk about all the positive things about the last Pope, and I went, "Oh my God, I'm writing all those things off
Yeah.
about how he was pushing the boundaries out." So at 43 years of age, to a 76-year-old dad, she was my teacher.
Mm,
And I just sat back and reflected and said, I needed to hear that.
mm.
So
It's
like
it's the willingness to listen, though, isn't it?
I had to, that's the key.
Mm.
I had I have to accept my own greatness,
Yeah.
be able to put aside my belief, do you follow me, or my
Yeah.
frustration, hopes, what I'm speaking out about some of the problems in the world and giving out about,
Mm.
you know, to accept and understand, my gosh, anybody can be my teacher.
Kevin, at 76 years of age, you're still rocking along. You're still passionate and enthusiastic about what you do. You're still running 8 forums. Um, what drives you?
I have an inner drive to experience, I suppose, aspects of myself I still haven't experienced. My next level is to take essence of leadership from being, I've already been working on it for a year and a half, but to really push it out from being a one-man band as it was, or a two-man band, to handing it over to a group of people and to help them. And that's, I just have this incredible passion at the moment to create workplaces and leaders who have a level of awareness that taps into the wisdom of everybody. As you said, that guy in the packing section, to
Mm,
realize that guy's a leader. He's might have gone out, got a courted a girl, got a partner, built a
mm,
house, or got an apartment, is raising kids. He's a total leader. And
mm.
can we engage with his or her wisdom rather than from a top down, somebody decides this is how we need to organize the warehouse? Can a group get together with him and say, what do we need to do? How can we improve things around here? And really listen to him or her. That's my passion.
Well, Kevin, if you manage to have that level of impact, you'll have done something right. So, Kevin Fahey, it's an absolute pleasure. Uh, Thank you for everything you've brought to the podcast.
And thank you, Paul. Really enjoyed it.
It's been a
And
pleasure.
I love talking about myself as well as listening.